Hello, welcome to Big 20, where we go behind the GM screen. I am Dan. This week I am joined by...
This is Mike.
And this is Eric. We did it backwards.
You did do it backwards, even though we literally just got done discussing that. So
Right.
I waited.
That's fine.
Right. He was just waiting.
Pick it up. So what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, this episode, we're going to talk about designing adventures based around a journey. Now, this could be a single adventure, or a mini campaign, or even an extended campaign based around an adventure, or based around a journey going from place to place. This is something that Mike and I discussed at one point.
Not this week.
He's back.
Oh,
Yeah, Eric. Yeah, it's like your internet cut out briefly.
Weird.
So redo your pitch.
We
Give
all
us the
have
elevator
audio.
pitch again.
This episode, we're going to talk about designing an adventure around a journey. It's either an adventure or a campaign, a mini campaign, however, whatever. It's, going from place to place, and what exactly does that mean? Having a journey in an RPG.
Classic example that comes to mind would be the Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that we're talking about,
And-
like on the biggest of grand scales.
Right.
Okay. I like it.
I like the idea because it scales up pretty good. Doesn't matter how many people you have. You can have a large party, small party. There's the logistics of overland travel, long distance will at least make things interesting enough to keep everyone occupied, which is usually a struggle when you're doing dungeon crawls, for example.
Well, yeah, the trouble with dungeon crawl is once you're in there, that's it. There's no getting out. But I think the fun of writing a journey adventure is the players know that there's an end game, right? And that keeps people motivated. When there's a finale, there's a finish, and you're working toward it, it seems to me like that keeps people engaged. But the players don't know what's in between, so you could keep injecting stuff. You could stretch it out as long as you wanted. Like, oh, we have this interesting side tangent that we can go on, and as long as the players are on board with it, or more importantly, if the players are like, oh, I kind of want to go over here and do this, and the players take the reins, then it kind of starts to write itself. And ideally, as lazy GMs, that's what we want. We want it to write itself. We want the players to do all the work for us, right? And then, but we still get the credit.
It will also benefit heavy role play type players, because they're they can sit around the campfire or whatever and talk to their heart's content, and the DM will just rack up that time.
Take copious notes. This is one of those take notes things, right? Because you don't know what gems are going to drop, and then you can cherry pick it and like, oh yeah, no, that's exactly what we were doing. All the while we weren't, but now we are, because now it's a good idea, especially if more than one person has it. GM players, it becomes a good idea, right? Multiple people.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you're doing is you're kind of like plumbing the depths, right? You're looking to see where you could possibly take it. The best way to do, in my opinion, the best way to do a journey story is to have maybe a loose outline of where you want them to be, and then, like you said, allow for some wiggle room with ways to bring them back towards whatever plot you have planned. The pitfall of that, of course, is they start to go off into left field, and there's a cartoon that I love where you have the well fleshed out plot hook NPC standing there going, "What about me?" And then the little cartoon of the players all standing around random NPC number 4 is just a little wooden cutout. That's the biggest fear in something.
We got to be a little fluid. Yeah, you got to be fluid here. So this is as much brainstorming as anything. I think it's kind of why we do this, to bounce ideas. So Lord of the Rings is, of course, the first thing that comes to mind. But me, I think an even better idea, because I just had it. I love cars, and we love 70s pulp. What about doing a modern era Cannonball Run style game going across America?
Now refresh my memory. What exactly was the Cannonball Run? Because I get that mixed up with other things. I've not seen
the Cannonball Run was a movie version of a race that actually took place called the Gumball, where teams of drivers drove as fast as they could from New York to, I want to say it was LA, but I'm not entirely positive. A little bit of trivia: the most recent Gumball that took place some years ago, for anybody who watches the television show Fast and Loud, the main guy, the guy who owns the garage in the TV show Fast and Loud, he was one of the winning drivers. It was one of his cars. Now, it was he and another.
Is this a legal thing, or is this like a under the books, or
This is what we would call operating in the gray areas. It's legal insofar as you don't get caught, right? But these things happen. So that was one of those classic movies growing up, and we love dipping into the old nostalgia filter. But I think there's a lot more opportunity than Lord of the Rings. Like, it's easy to get stuck in that big idea. Like, this is because it's the benchmark, right? We all know that Lord of the Rings is the benchmark. But Gage, Car Wars. Literally one of my greatest Gen Con finds of all time was the complete Car Wars compendium set.
That's right. I believe he had to change his underwear twice.
It was so good. I have not probably been happier at Gen Con before or since. It's when you find little gems like that. But I think we could do that kind of game in multiple systems. I don't think it really matters so much. Yeah. But take that Lord of the Rings idea, take that big journey, and maybe step out and go into other genres, maybe a modern genre. We've also talked about often doing a Star Wars campaign of the Kessel Run, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a group of people from the far reaches of space, and your destination would be like the final race is the Kessel Run. Right. But the journey of getting to the Kessel Run, when you're backwater plan and you have nothing. A lot of it. So what else? What other kind of journeys can we take?
Well, I mean,
because in my mind, I'm just doing Cannonball Run. Right. That's it.
What genre games or what kind of
whatever you got. Both, all of the above.
I mean, if you want to get like low down urban about it, instead of going from West Coast to East Coast, it could be something as simple as the movie The Warriors. We're just trying to get from
get home.
One point in the city to the other.
Fight through gang territory just to get back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Milo and Otis, right? The movie about the dogs. Very often we have that I just want to get home journey.
Yeah.
Right. We see this. There was the other movie with Jude Law where he was the Civil War defector. I can't remember. Cold Mountain. Again, a movie about a guy just trying. It was really good. Movie about a guy just trying to get home. You could almost bookend an existing adventure with this type of like a finale, right?
Sure.
Well, yeah, that's sort of how Lord of the Rings ends. They kill. They destroy the ring. Sauron's dead. The hobbits go home. There's a whole journey the other way, and then when they get back to the Shire, they have to beat some ass and all that fun stuff.
For all those people who never read the books, they have no idea that anything ever happened. Right? Exactly. What's Frodo doing in the Shire, beating ass while dying?
All right. So, like you said, what we do is we brainstorm, right? We're bouncing ideas off of each other. So you start talking about cars, Milo and Otis, and things like that, and having some sort of like a tangible goal that they're going for.
Yes.
Here's my pitch. Major League.
Random encounter the game. Sorry.
Major League. Right?
Ooh. Yeah.
Star Wars pod racing team.
Okay. Yeah. This all works.
You have a team
Days of Thunder.
Days of Thunder.
No, sorry.
You have a team of
It's a circle track.
You have a team of misfits who, maybe the corporate owner or the hut wants them to lose.
A comedy version would be Major League, right? The Charlie Sheen Major League.
Right. Exactly.
Where the villain is the owner.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. So you got the Major League, you got the owner who wants to maybe get out of their contract with the Huts. And he's like, I've got to lose all of these matches, and I don't care if my team ends up dying. I'm not gonna give them good parts. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that. They're gonna be, going from system to system in this junky old, vehicle going to all these different races, but I'm not going to support them at all. So then you've got the player characters having to go from place to place, having to fend for themselves, or coming up with their own, stealing shit to try and, get parts for their pod racer.
Lie, cheat, steal to survive. One-sided die in the chat possibly just won this entire episode at the very beginning. Yeah. The Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Or doing an Oregon Trail style game. Aces and Eights is made for this, right? Because Aces and Eights is designed to kill people, and that's what the Oregon Trail is.
Yeah.
It's just a vehicle to kill people.
Right.
I guess that'd be a good way to kill an evening.
See, I am on record as I'm not a huge Old West fan. I love that game just because of its beautiful insanity, but like I would run that game. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it does sound interesting.
Yes. And let people, and you would run it maybe DCC style where, a character, you don't just have your one, you have like
everybody in your wagon.
Like, yeah, exactly. You have all kinds of people because we know eventually you're going to get whittled down and whittled down.
I mean, that's why the pioneers had so many kids, because most of them are going to die. You just have a whole wagon full of people. And that's you going through the Oregon Trail is your funnel.
Okay, it's a long ass funnel, but it's great. I love it. So good.
Yeah, one-sided die has a good point. You gotta know what it says you have to have some anticipation of the challenges. So something's either chasing you, or you're chasing something. You're trying to get somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just we're not talking just straight random encounters.
Right. Oh no, and like Smokey and the Bandit, you're talking a race against time. You got to get somewhere and back by a certain time. Or the princess succumbs to the.
I ran that.
Yep, Mike ran that.
I ran.
You did? Why was I not a part of this, Mike?
That was on Monday.
Yeah, it was.
Don't talk to me about Monday. I'm not part of it.
It was a pirate thing though, wasn't it?
It was a high seas Smoking the Bandit. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, son of a bitch. Never talk about games that I'm not a part of. Okay, so we've nailed a whole bunch. When we started this, I had no idea that this, that's why I love doing it this way, because I had no idea we would end up in this place. This is the nature of collaborative GMing, right? Because I alone, probably would never have thought of anything because in my mind it's just Lord of the Rings, and that's a sacred cow, and I'm never going to touch that, right? But it's about what can we do a la Lord of the Rings in a different way.
Right. That's what we do here on Big 20. We collaborate with each other. We're all GMs, and we're not just talking about the three of us. We're talking about everybody in that chat.
Yes, and Discord and any other part of the community. Right. That's the hope, is that it's ongoing and possibly a resource or something that we can get value out of, so that we can run a better game, or at least a more interesting game that crashes and burns. But that is also a learning experiment.
Right.
Maybe your players don't find the Oregon Trail so fun, and you as a GM murdering people is less fun for them than it is you.
That's right. But you're
only
better
one
for
way to
living
find
through
out.
it. See,
Yes.
you make it through to the other end. That's the point,
Yes.
right?
That's the journey. That's the GM's journey, I suppose.
Right.
So good. Mike, what other type of journeys have you run over the years? You say you did Smokey and the Bandit without me. What else have you done without me?
You don't want to ask that question.
Journeys?
That's
Yes.
a long answer.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I'll remind you of one that
Okay.
I was actually a part of. There are a lot of themes from old movies that we can pull from. I'll start with The Lost City of Gold, and anything. How many times have we heard the tale of searching for the Fountain of Youth? Right, which we did in the original Sea Princess campaign. We essentially found. Remember, Mike? You remember this? You ran this. A Greyhawk equivalent of a Fountain of Youth. These are, we can take modern fairy tales or myths or legends, port that over into fantasy where it's completely plausible.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite things to do, actually, is to go through. I go through like old mythology or folklore and things like that, and try and look for little gems of, because there is the theory that there are no new ideas, just rehashed old ones.
Right.
And
well, okay, I want to address this, and this won't be the last time. I may have already done it. There are no new ideas, but there are lots of different ideas that people can assemble in a way that is unique and new. Right. It's how you put these things together. So you're rambling off, and I came up with two others, and we're digging into like highbrow classic shit, right? The Odyssey,
right,
or Dante's Inferno. Dante's Inferno would make an amazing D&D campaign.
It would make an amazing Dark Heresy campaign.
Dark Heresy game, or maybe even like a White Wolf style game.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to go to 7 different cities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Each progressively fucking worse than the last.
Fucking worse than the last one. Right?
Well, and because
then of course like the last layer of hell, right? Or it's the ninth level of hell is cold, so you have to end up in somewhere in like somewhere near the Arctic Circle or something like Moose Jaw or some shit.
Yes. See, this is why we do this. Thinking of, we already have a frame of reference for the Odyssey with "O Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Sure.
Right. So I think there's an opportunity. Who wouldn't want to play that? I want to play. Mike, can you run "O Brother, Where Art Thou" for me? That would be great. Be perfect. Or Spartacus. Spartacus again is the single man journey. So here's the hard part. A lot of the things that we're bringing up are for one person. Right. Okay, so how do we tackle that problem?
Well, the Odyssey, I mean, sure, it's it's one man, but he had a crew, and that's really what you do is you make the goal itself something that everybody wants, or you make it big enough that one person wants it and everybody else buys in and wants it for that person too. Yeah.
Well, like Dante, I mean, he's going to find his wife, right? There was a Robin Williams movie, amazing movie. I can't remember the name of it. It was Dante's Inferno, essentially. I cannot think of it right now.
Is that the Terry Gilliam one?
Maybe. What Dreams May Come.
Oh,
that's it. I knew.
Not what it was.
Yes, it's very good. So, how would we? Is this
a question there?
Well, yeah, no, I'm working the question out in my mind. Is this a level 1 to 20 thing, or is this a 9th level to 15th level kind of thing? Like, do you think you could start like this journey at level 1? Like, is that something that we can sell?
Well, in D&D terms, I'd say it'd be definitely more fun on the lower end.
Okay.
Because on the higher end of D&D and other games, any kind of journey storyline is ruined by stuff like teleportation and flying.
Okay. Well, we are the GMs. Maybe we have to get heavy-handed with this, and you outlaw it. Or we play by the rules and say, yes, you can have teleport if you have all the material components, which I know you do not have nor will ever get.
Well, that's something that you certainly need to establish in your session 0.
Yeah. And I don't think this is unreasonable, right?
Because the risk you run then is, you need to have character creation at the table. You need to have a session 0 because you may have a player who builds off of maybe some sort of limited teleport ability or something like that. That's what they're building towards. And they walk in, sit down, and they go, my character's now invalid. Yes, having that kind of a discussion to begin with and say, or make it, make it part of the story. Maybe something's going on that's disrupting that level of magic, and that's something that you have to overcome.
Yes. Yeah. One-sided die, fly. Yes. Good example of, again, and to me, this is one of the great flaws of these all-encompassing rule sets is that creates a loophole. There's always a loophole, right? So I think personally that we don't, I rarely see Eric do it. And I also rarely see Mike do it, is get heavy-handed with that book and say, these are the things that are completely outlawed. Like we did with the Frenzied Berserker, but that was because it was socially acceptable to do it because it was so completely broken, right? And Mike, you've flat banned a few things, but it's rare, right?
It's rare. It's mostly 3.5 stuff.
Right. Or a specific book here or there.
I know that such a journey storyline would be impossible for a superhero campaign. Because of all the flying and speedsters and teleporters, and there's always one. And it
would have to be a superhero who has lost their powers, right? And the journey is doing whatever it is they have to do to get them back. Maybe, superhero that would be a tough one, or maybe street level, but certainly not like Paragon level. You couldn't do.
Right, and to be clear, we're talking about a actual journey adventure campaign, whatnot, not in the physical sense, not in some sort of like metaphysical sense or anything like that. So so powers like this would make it very difficult. Now when you're talking about superheroes, you'd almost have to take it up a notch into almost like the cosmic level, or like the planar level or something like that.
Extra dimensions and shit. Yeah.
Right. You would have to. It would have to be something like that, because you're right. Teleporting and especially the way that we make characters, like for Mutants and Masterminds. Jason, our friend Jason, made a character who could teleport and basically could be anywhere she wanted to be, and do all of this stuff. To the point where we found out very quickly that teleport was in fact the most powerful ability in the book. the most powerful single ability in the book. Yeah, well, especially when you could do things like didn't he teleport but he could teleport other people like someone's heart out of their chest. And
theoretically, that was possible. He enjoyed teleporting people to the Marianas Trench. Right. So there's a whole lot of trash and villains, right?
Which reminds me of the Justice League one that we did. We did an actual
play. Piss off the trench.
And Brandon said, "It's not a trash can, Clark."
Yes. It was perfect. Classic one-liner from Brandon. Classic.
So one-sided die is correct. That the best way to implement this is to weigh down the characters, have something large and heavy. They got to transport wagons, the whole...
This is a good vehicle for the escort mission, too.
Right. You have to escort this iron golem. You can't teleport those bastards.
Right. Figure out how to wade a river with that guy.
Yeah. I got to swim across this river with this thing on my back. Are you kidding me?
You got to wait while it walks underneath.
Right.
And hope for the best.
Right. Lodestone golem. Right.
So one thing I'm always, for anyone in chat who doesn't follow us, I have a well-documented love that my favorite D&D world is Al-Qadim. And I'm always kind of looking for a reason to play it, because a lot of the fluff still works with very little conversion into fifth edition. And I've always been fascinated by the story of the city of Brass, much like the Alan Quatermain in The Lost City of Gold is the journey to the city of Brass. I think that would be a really, really interesting journey, especially if, because a lot of players right now in D&D, we kind of exist in the world of Forgotten Realms, right? And that's where games start, and that's where a lot of people are comfortable. But because of the nature of D&D and the planes, we can go to all of these other places. So your journey in D&D doesn't have to stay in Forgotten Realms or in Greyhawk, right, or where Ravenloft. If you get there, you're pretty much stuck there. But
the latest D&D book is all about the planes, and it's not Forgotten Realms at all.
That's right? Good. This is stuff that we need, I think. Finally.
And I mean, you could do something like that. I mean, you could really like push the envelope if you wanted to, cross those streams, and go from one material plane to another and all that other stuff. I mean, you could certainly do. I mean, that's basically what Mordecai does, right? He goes to all these different planes and does all this stuff, and has adventures. He could be going on a journey that no one else knows about. And that kind of brings up what I wanted to bring up was when you have a journey, when that is the plan is, we're going to do a journey, it almost is essential that the player characters, or at least one of them, knows what they're trying to do, knows what the end goal is. Because if you don't know that you're supposed to throw this ring into that volcano, then there can be a lot of straying from the goal and all that stuff. Yep. And I think a lot of the modern adventure paths and things like that, you almost get everything piecemeal, because honestly, they're being written by different writers. They may have a certain path that they're supposed to go down, but different writers are writing different parts of the adventure. So,
that adventure started with no end in sight.
Right, or more.
I would suspect
very vague ending in sight, and so they're not written. They're giving this little bit piecemeal. I mean, think about and spoiler alert for those who didn't do the Hoard of the Dragon Queen and whatnot. But how long into it did it before it took the player characters to really realize what the final goal was going to be?
I vaguely remember it's either the very end of the first book or the beginning of the second, where the players kind of start working with the leaders of Waterdeep and amassing the war on all fronts. So it's either at the end of the first book or the beginning of the second. But for us, that was many, many months, maybe even a year. Before the end goal was really solid. So I thought of something. I want to back up a little bit. Another reason for the heavy-handed GM for this, a classic, at least to me, terrible but awesome. It's terrible, awesome. Would not exist if the GM wasn't heavy-handed, and that is the story of Dragon Slayer. Taking the rock that has the wizard stored in the rock. The wizard could have just teleported, slain the dragon, and it all been fine. But no, he needed the vehicle of these people to get his phylactery where it needed to go, right? That story could not have been told in a system that has teleport or some of these other really, really game-breaking spells. So you have to, I think we have a solid use case to flat ban these things for particular types of stories.
Right. There's some game systems, and I think not just game systems, but genre or IP, whatever you want to say. I mean, some of them work better for this. I mean, we primarily talk about D&D, but there's other games out there. I mean, the new Conan game, very low magic, and magic, actual spells take a long time to cast. And that's the way. Remember back in the old days of D&D, some spells had long casting times. And it seemed like
make it prohibitive.
Am I remembering correct, Mike?
Yeah,
as I recall, there was like some of them had it took the entire turn to cast certain spells and things like that.
Sure.
So those kind of things, but. The funny thing is, we sit here and we talk about how it's really not possible to write a travel story with somebody who has fly or teleport, with easy transport access. But yet we do not ever think that way about a Star Wars campaign. Where if you don't have a ship in a Star Wars campaign, if you say, okay, guys, I'm going to run a Star Wars game, but no ships, you're not playing Star Wars. Because
you know what? That totally sounds like something I would do, right? I mean, honestly, that's something I would do.
No ships.
No ships. Mumfrey in the chat says, sandbox with a guided overview. I would like to take that a step further and maybe play a sandbox, and your players don't know it's a sandbox, right? Because we have the beginning and we have the end. We understand what our parameters are. That basically makes it a sandbox, letting them play in it. All the while, they don't even know they're playing in a sandbox. I think that probably is the best way to do sandbox, because often, especially with video games, if you know you're in a sandbox, you never touch the main storyline, like Mike was saying, and we're over here dealing with random NPC number 5 because we've it's shiny and we are bad players.
Right. Or is it
Mumfrey also brought up about railroading. Well, sometimes this kind of adventure we're talking about, you have to buy into the railroad. Sometimes it actually is set on a railroad.
Oh, yeah.
Literally
on a railroad.
Come on.
Ooh, I like this.
Was that
this
show Hell on Wheels? All about creating the railroad? Hell yeah. Do one of those. But yeah, there is a certain amount of buy-in, no doubt. And I think that right now the sexy terms are sandbox, and the trigger word is railroad, and so I understand.
Oh my god! I'm sorry. I keep having these. I keep having ideas.
Make your head blow up.
So you said railroad, right? Snowpiercer,
right?
As it. Oh my God, what an amazing campaign that would be. And then that makes me think again of one of my all-time favorites, the movie Dread, the Carl Urban Dread. That's a journey, anything where you're fighting to a destination and they're fighting their way through this awful tower of scum, to get to the end, which is Lena Headey, which it literally does not get any better than that. So these are journey stories that I didn't even think of.
They can be short, some can be really long.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is an example of the long, stretched out one, but some can literally be just going from, bottom floor to the top floor.
Yeah.
I think you could, especially in like a Mega City 1, style hive stack. This is a very Necromunda thing. These are the kind of stories you could definitely tell in 40K.
Right.
I think that'd be interesting.
One-sided is
most zombie
is
movies. Yes, one-sided. Totally. Yes, those are anything where you're surviving the night too is kind of a destination.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good point. A journey doesn't necessarily have to be distance. It could be time. It could be 3 o'clock high, and you're worried about you're playing a game.
Oh yeah.
And you're worried about having a fight at the end of school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be anything like that where you're trying to.
You got to get Adam Baldwin to bodyguard you.
Right.
That was another
better
movie.
than that.
No one.
Animal Mother.
Yeah.
See, I went there. I didn't go Jane.
Yeah.
Jane's the easy answer. Animal Mother.
Yeah, no, Animal Mother. So you say time. I was thinking much earlier, but I didn't bring it up. What if? Because everybody knows I love the pressure cooker. I love my egg timers in games. What if at the beginning of your game you say you have 1 year, like something has to happen in 1 year of in-game time, and that creates the pressure cooker where we often put things off. We procrastinate because we have time until we don't have any time anymore. And then that creates a really interesting dynamic toward the end where we've got to get this stuff done. And now we're under a pressure cooker.
Right.
I think that would be interesting too. I like giving in things like this up front. I think there's value to it.
Right. And knowing ahead of time, you've got this much time rather than, I mean, how many times have you done an adventure or ran an adventure and it's like, okay, the players are just dicking around and we need to do something because nobody's making a decision. Prime example, Shadowrun, right?
Yes.
In real time, you've just planned 4.5 hours, until.
And what I find most funny about this is I lurk conversations in Twitter and online. We're not every Shadowrun group does this.
Right.
9 hours of planning to throw it out the window and kick in the door at the last minute.
Right.
Everyone does this.
Sleep deprivation kicks in and you're just like, man, fuck this. I don't care what we do. Let's just do something. Right.
What if we inject a journey, maybe a time-based journey, or it can be both, in the middle of a game that's totally out of nowhere and it's Snakes on a Plane, right? Snakes on a Plane is a journey movie, right? It's a journey movie and it's a survive the night or survive the event kind of thing. And it's very quick. And this could be a one-off night.
Sure.
Interesting.
And something that, you're talking about survive the night reminds me of, video games like, what's that? Left 4 Dead,
Sure.
where you've got to get to the helicopter or whatever. You got to get to this safe area, and you've got zombies everywhere. I mean, you could totally do something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be zombies. Take Left 4 Dead, right? And you, instead of zombies, make it an orc tribe or, whatever. And players
a lot of these things require very little change of window dressing and it's a totally different new thing.
Yeah. And that's the fun of something like this where you start talking about one thing. And like you said, you say, okay, we're going to talk about journeys. Can we fill an hour of talk just about Lord of the Rings and how they walk everywhere? But then you start looking at what does that really mean? What does a journey really mean? And then you start bouncing these ideas, and getting all this input, and it almost fires you up, and you want to write some of this shit down because you're like, yeah, I could totally do this. I could totally do a Left 4 Dead scenario, except it's orcs instead of zombies, or it's whatever.
It's a cult of spider people. Anything. This is a good opportunity to create brand new things too.
Right.
Another type of game that I've really wanted to run for many, many years, but I've never been able to figure out how to pull it off, is the Jason Voorhees Get Off the Island style adventure, where you have a group of people, but there's really only one bad guy. There's only one villain. There's only one thing to fight. And you can't kill it in your first encounter. You can't kill it in your second encounter. And everything you do, they keep coming back, right? How to pull that off in game. Not to mention the fact that the nature of that kind of a story is players are going to die, right? And then you alienate people and you isolate. That's why it's such a difficult thing to do. But I think it would be a really fun game. Again, because killing the players is really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, that could be like a Halloween scenario game or something.
Yeah, I've always thought about running that like as a one-off, or like a Resident Evil style mansion murder, slasher movie murderer, in the hotel lobby at Gen Con. But I'm
not so much. I don't think that's on theme because that's a set location that doesn't move.
Right. Well,
what you're looking for is more like Predator.
Get Off the Island, or Escape from New York.
There you go. Yeah.
Kind of along those lines. Escape the island, escape the fortress kind of a scenario.
Yeah. What was that? Castle Wolfenstein.
Yeah. We get to murder cyber Nazis,
right. Yeah, well, that's the newfangled Wolfenstein. I remember the old school where it was like
old school, the original, the original Wolfenstein.
Nazis?
At the very end, yeah, you had cyber Nazis.
Cyber
See if I can
Nazis.
play that.
It's classic.
But yeah,
Now that you brought up Wolfenstein, it got me thinking of castles and dungeons again, and how that's also another thing I would avoid
Okay.
in this kind of a theme. Back to the islands and the jungles, or going across Middle Earth. One of the other things that you're up against, like Oregon Trail, is the environment. This is another reason why I would like this to be a low level thing, because when you're a high level character, high level rangers and whatnot, they're not so much worried about cold and quicksand and things like that. But you can get into that.
Yeah. No, I agree that, and these are all reasons why I believe encumbrance and gear are all really important things, and there are a lot of throwaway cantrips in the game that completely prevent misery, right? Because that's what the Oregon Trail was, the story of misery, right? I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm hungry, I'm all of these things are all very, very easily remedied by these throwaway spells in D&D.
Shit, man, not even spells. A survival roll.
Well, there's a background in D&D that's taken often. It's one of the better ones, and just for free, they can provide food for themselves and 4 people.
Right.
Just completely hand waved.
Yeah. So I mean, it's almost D&D has transitioned from a resource game to more of a less of a resource. I don't know what's the opposite of a resource game. I don't even really know what the term is.
An acquisition game. Well, yeah.
I mean,
It's always been acquisition.
Yeah, it's always been that. I mean, it's just like you're not having to manage your resources anymore, and there's nothing wrong with that, because you can tell bigger stories and not have to worry about that level of minutia. But some people do like that minutia. Especially if that's the story you're telling. If you say, "Hey, I want to do a story where, like the Oregon Trail, where you're going somewhere and you have to manage your resources," say that from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, and
It's like speed running a game. What we're talking about is a long, protracted thing where you're managing your resources.
This is the cell for Torchbearer. Torchbearer is a resource management game disguised as Burning Wheel, or Burning Wheel disguised as a resource management game. One of the two. Just like in chat says, create food and water.
Yeah.
Throwaway thing, easy. It fixes so many problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, that's the thing. I don't think when you sit down and say, I want to play D&D, most people, I think nowadays, don't even think about that level of gaming. It's not something, and frankly, I think it's not something that a lot of people are really that interested in doing. You have to have a kind of a going in with the mindset of, this is what I want to do. And so people who just want to sit down and throw dice, they're not going to want to keep track of all of their food, and especially when you start throwing, like as a dick myself, I would, you start throwing things like bears and things like that eating your food. You throw as a general rule, you throw a bear to go in to eat the food of a D&D group, the bear becomes the food. So. Yeah.
And that's okay, if I'm 4th or 5th level. But if that happens when it's 1st or 2nd level, bears are a problem. Right. This is a big deal, and this could possibly kill us.
Eat the bear.
Eat the bear, yeah. Which Jason would say they're good eating. I'm sure.
Right. To go back to a point that you were talking about earlier about dungeon crawls and how there's really no travel involved, and it just kind of it's there. It reminded me of a story our friend Babs told me about Shannon, one of Shannon's games. What she did was she had converted Keep on the Borderlands to 5th edition. And I don't know how many people out there remember Keep on the Borderlands, but it's one of those things where you kind of go from the town to the dungeon. And back in the day, it was you go there and you're expected to like camp there and just kind of go through and the number of enemies is proportionate to the level or the difficulty of the game back then, and she didn't adjust the numbers of what they were fighting. She kind of kept it at the old first edition levels. And a first edition goblin and a fifth edition goblin are completely different things.
Totally different things.
Yeah, and if you're keeping those level of that number of things, they were getting almost wiped out in the first fight and had to run
good old pack tactics.
Right, and had to run all the way back to town. And Babs was like, I just got tired of going back to frickin' town all the time. Every time we'd get into a fight, we'd have to turn around and go back to town. And Shannon's the kind of GM who wants to role play every step of the journey. And it's like, okay, we've been in the woods for 3 days, going back to town. We're not making any headway. And I could see that that's an example of trying to run an old school style game with a modern sensibility player. It can be very difficult because
that's again, and this is also like conversion can be deceptively difficult,
right?
Because you don't necessarily know how all these old encounters are going to play out with new numbers and new abilities. It could be that the players completely wipe it because the power curve of players are different.
Right.
So there are many ways for that to fail, pro and against players.
Right.
So I was thinking, I think maybe we just need to be more liberal with advantage, disadvantage, and all of these things. Like you're cold, you have disadvantage. You're hungry, you have disadvantage. Because people, advantage is good, but as good as advantage is, disadvantage is like infinitely better in the other direction. Players enjoy having advantage. They hate having disadvantage, and maybe that's how you evoke that mood. Like I'm tired of having disadvantage, so I have to go and get food.
Oh man,
right?
Could you imagine talking about a journey, right? Could you imagine a journey starting off with the player characters getting some sort of curse or cursed item where everything they do is at disadvantage, and so they have to do things like assist each other and all this other stuff just to get up to par.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very short game.
The players would stop playing probably.
Yes. Revolt. But this is the kind of thing like, because in these games, gods meddle in the affairs of mortals. This is the kind of thing that a god would just do for fun, right?
Yeah,
I think this group of people, yes, one-sided die says correctly, fuck you, Eric. Yes, that's how we do this. Or maybe not an entire campaign, but a short-term curse or a short-term event that maybe a night or two is completely at disadvantage. Makes people really appreciate when they don't have it.
Right. I know a GM who if you touch your phone, you're at disadvantage.
Ooh, now this I like. Yes, we've often tried the cell phones in the bucket. It never works. It never works because they're just so part of who and what we are and how we exist.
Have your hand in the bucket the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Dipping my hand in the bucket. And then even as a GM, like if I need to look something up immediately, you still have it with you. So you can't make exceptions because you have to be even about these things.
Yep.
So
what
other
being liberal with the disadvantage? I mean,
it's such a great mechanic.
Extreme,
No, but that's, I think extremes on both ends create a good middle ground. You find the middle ground. And that's fine. I think extremes are good. I think extremes are really necessary, especially in instances like this.
Yeah, it makes for a good story too, because you're like, remember that time you screwed us?
Yeah. Well, again, I often talk about the story of the game, not the story that's in the game, but the story of the game is the story that the players tell years and years later, right? That to me is what's really important, is creating these opportunities to create a memory. So we have about another 10 or so minutes. What other have we left any interesting journeys out? We've gone places I had no idea we were going to go.
Yeah, anybody in the chat got something to throw out there for us? A journey. So
any unknown journeys?
It's big.
Yeah.
And this is where, when you put your GM hat on and you consume media, you see things much differently, right? So if I'm thinking about GMing a journey, every movie, every show that I watch is is an opportunity to get inspired for a journey.
On a complete tangent, it reminds me that my wife loves those, whodunit murder shows, like the unsolved mysteries and all that stuff. I've been sitting and watching with her a couple of them, and I'm like, how could I spin this for Cthulhu? Those kind of things. But yeah,
Cthulhu. See, a Cthulhu is another fun. We have a lot of really fun adventure movies that are journeys. I think most like the good Indiana Jones movies, they're journey movies. They're item acquisition journeys, and a fun pulp, global spanning kind of thing. So those are, who wouldn't want to play an Indiana Jones style pulp game?
Right.
And you inspired this because you were talking about Cthulhu. So, information gathering, the hunting down the trail of cultists that lead you to this horrible, inevitable end, which is insanity and or death.
Right.
That's the beauty of Cthulhu.
Well, and talking about Indiana Jones, taking it in that pulp roots and go Hollow Earth. I mean, there's the journey to the center of the earth, that kind of thing. You've got all those old movies and that's the thing about old movies is you can watch some of the really like the most terrible movies ever made. Plan 9 from Outer Space. You could watch that and still get inspiration for. Yeah.
And then your play, unless you have Jason in your party, your players have not seen this, and you can take complete credit. Right. And then you look good.
Right.
It was mentioned in chat that dungeon crawls are technically a journey to somewhere as well. And I won't argue that, except getting to the dungeon was probably part of your initial journey.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, you're kind of free to come and go, sort of, unless that dungeon is absolutely an A to B prospect. I don't know.
That's a good point, Mike. What's the difference between a journey and wandering? Because, and it's the goal, right? It's when you're on a journey, the goal. So a dungeon crawl, yes, could certainly be a journey if you know exactly what you're there for.
Otherwise, you're wandering,
and you got to get there in a certain amount of time,
right? And the Baron telling you I'm having kobold problems, and they live over there, and then you go there and you find out that the beholder is causing the kobolds to they're relocating because of this other monster or whatever. You don't know that until you get there. That's a wandering. That's not a journey. The journey is. You have the goal, the quest, right? It's you have a purpose,
right?
Unless your purpose, I guess, is to clear the dungeon so you can fix this place up.
Yeah, it would be again. This is Lord of the Rings level difficulty to pull off. Would be the Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and the Search for the Holy Grail. Right. That's one of the greatest journey stories of all time. It'd be really hard to pull off, but there are a lot of themes in there that I think you could play with for a D&D game.
Well, that's actually if you look at a lot of the Grail lore, it's like the prototype for some of this stuff, because it wasn't necessarily because going to find the Grail, that was just the plot device to get them to wherever the adventure was, right? And then it was the story of this knight and what he did he was looking for the Grail, but he ended up having this adventure. That's exactly what we're talking about, is have the end goal, present the end goal, but then have the wiggle room or the sandboxy feel of it, where if they see adventure, the opportunity for adventure, they take it, or they go, you know what, I'm on a mission, I need to do this. And that's sometimes I think you have to do those things.
Okay, we might run over a little bit, so bear with me while I work this out. Last Temptation of Christ. Okay,
right.
Paladin, your end goal, what your end goal is. It's something that is extraordinarily holier than thou, and the journey is tempting him and trying to pull him off of that journey.
Oh,
you know, trying to.
Kind of like the Buckingham Palace guards who stand there and the chicks like flash their cooch at them and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Which kudos to them,
right.
By the way.
Those guys don't even move. Those guys are awesome.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. That would be a really good, very small party game. You know, like GM and 1 or 2 players maybe. Yeah.
Boshi is totally singing that House of Women and the Holy Grail.
Oh yeah.
Gotta pull her out.
We got some. Yeah. There might be some peril here.
Oh boy,
we've had entirely too much peril.
The group 6, right?
Yes.
You know, I like more than a good journey in a role-playing game is playing Journey while Journey.
Sure.
In a role-playing game.
That's an inside joke because every time we play on a Monday, they have the radio going in the shop.
It's on the speakers,
and it's like they know Mike walks in. It's like I sometimes wonder if places
it's set up.
Yeah, know who's going to be walking in the door at some certain times because it's like why would they be playing this song right now? And it's
because they know. Yeah. Because every person has a theme song, whether they know it or not.
Right.
There's a theme song to their life.
Right.
This is like a playlist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Stephen Perry apparently sang Mike's theme song. We just haven't figured it out yet.
That's a pretty high bar for Steve Perry. That is, you know, Mike Bridges' shoes to fill.
Right.
This is tough.
That's right.
Let's go on an adventure. Yep. This has been fun. Thank you all for stopping by and spending the evening with us. That was really good. That was really good. We went places I had no idea we were gonna go. This is why brainstorming is so important. And you can't do this stuff alone.
Yeah. So programming note: we will not be streaming next week, but we will on the 18th. So we will be back on the 18th for another episode of Big 20. If you're not already following us, please follow us. And then you'll be notified when we're going to be on. Again, it's going to be Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central. We also have we're on Twitter and Facebook. So if you have a topic idea or something you want to expound on what we're saying,
interesting journeys,
harass us.
Yeah. Feel free to harass us. Yeah, mostly just harass Mike.
Right. Yeah, he is a sponge. He is a sponge for this. We have honed him for this event.
That's right.
So, again, thank you all for stopping by. We appreciate it very much.